estimate that by 2030, we're going to have between 88 million and 440 million leaders around the world. That is, people who are responsible for others. Now, of course, the numbers are quite diverse because one is very conservative, one is a little bit less conservative, but if you kind of want to go somewhere in the middle, we're looking at around 200 million leaders around the world by the year 2030. That is a lot of people. If we're going to have hundreds of millions of people in leadership roles where their job is to shape society, to shape the world, to shape cultures and values, then we better make sure that we have the right people in place. So how do we figure out what the leader of the future is going to look like? So I interviewed 140 CEOs at companies around the world. In fact, I'm still doing one or two of these interviews because the manuscript for this book isn't even due for another week. So I interviewed the CEOs of companies like Unilever, MasterCard, Best Buy, Oracle, Yahoo, Kaiser, all over the world. Over 20 countries, representing over 35 industries, and these CEOs are collectively responsible for the lives of over 7 million people. In addition to that, I also partnered with LinkedIn, the world's largest professional social network. I'm sure many of you are on LinkedIn. And we surveyed almost 14,000 employees around the world who identified as being employed full-time. And the idea here was to try to match what CEOs are telling me versus what employees who work for these CEOs are actually experiencing. And what I wanted to understand is, what will it take to be a leader in the future? What are the common themes that keep coming up from all of these discussions with 140 CEOs? Now, the first question that I asked all of these CEOs is a very basic one. What is leadership? Who is a leader? And the responses that I got back to this question just totally blew my mind. I got responses like, that's a good question. Or, oh man, that's a tough one. Or, nobody's ever asked me that before. And you can imagine I'm interviewing these CEOs, I'm thinking, okay, let me understand this. You are the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. You are responsible for the lives of thousands of employees, and this is a hard question? Doesn't make any sense. And so this totally blew me away, but then I started to think about it a little bit, and I realized that we take these concepts for granted. Leadership and being a leader, most people take it for granted. It's sort of like water. I mean, if you had to define water to somebody, would you be able to? I mean, what would you say? It's a clear, tasteless liquid? Thousands of liquids fit into that category. But everybody knows what water is because we're surrounded by it. It's everywhere. And so we assume that everybody knows what water is. And leadership is very much the same. We experience leadership and we see leaders every day in multiple forms. Inside of your company, when you go to the supermarket to buy something and you see a supervisor and how they interact with the rest of their employees. When you go shopping for anything. When you watch TV, when you listen to the news, when you listen to the radio, when you play sports. It's everywhere. And because it's everywhere, we sort of assume that everybody knows what it is, and everybody knows what a good leader is, and who a leader is, and what makes a great leader, because it's everywhere. But what I learned from asking these CEOs these questions is that leaders don't spend enough time asking this very, very basic thing. So ask yourselves that, mentally. What is leadership? How would you define leadership if I had to ask you to define it? 140 CEOs I interviewed, I got 140 responses on how they define leadership. No 140 responses were the same. How could that be the case? 140 of the world's top CEOs all define leadership differently. And the way that they define leadership then dictates the type of organization that they create. Some leaders that I interviewed said, leadership is about results. It's about putting the right people in the right chairs and achieving the mission of the organization. Nothing else matters. And then you look at the type of culture that CEO creates, and it reflects on the definition that he gave me. And then another CEO would say something like, it's about purpose and meaning and impact and doing the right thing and making the world a better place. You see that that CEO created a different culture. So the definitions and how you think about these things matter a great deal. And the fact that CEOs and business leaders around the world don't spend enough time thinking about it also means that the organizations as a whole don't spend enough time thinking about this. And that is a challenge.